Tonight we wander into steaming jungles where time doesn't tick, it drips, echoes, and slithers. You move slowly through thick, humming air, vines tugging at your clothes like tiny green timekeepers, tugging you toward something ancient. Birds screech overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a stone drum echoes. And then you see it, a pyramid rising out of the canopy, its face carved with glyphs that look like smiling gods and corn stalks doing geometry. You're deep in the heart of the Maya world now, and nothing here follows a straight line, not rivers, not roads, and definitely not time. Forget clocks. Forget calendars on your fridge with dentist appointments and cat stickers. Here, time is sacred. It loops, stretches, compresses. It's watched through the movement of Venus, tasted in spicy tamales, etched in the folds of tree bark. And if you mess it up, well, let's just say the gods might throw a thunder tantrum, or worse, your corn might not grow. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive that. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step barefoot onto a worn limestone path slick with moss. Around you, trees reach up like green skyscrapers, and monkeys chirp from the treetops, possibly judging your outfit. The smell of wet bark and roasting maize lingers in the air. You glance at a nearby stone stela, half covered in vines, and squint at the glyphs. They're not just decorative. That's a date. A real date. The Maya etched time into their monuments like eternal tattoos. It's not just the big ceremonies or royal birthdays, they tracked eclipses, harvests, the birth of gods, the end of worlds, or at least cycles, all with precision that could make your iPhone calendar blush. Their time system is so rich and weirdly accurate that NASA still references Maya eclipse records. You follow a group of locals carrying woven baskets. They glance back at you, a little amused. You're clearly new here, but they're kind. One of them points up at a temple, and you see a figure climbing, slowly, deliberately. A priest in shimmering blue feathers, his face painted like a jaguar, ascending toward a small observatory on top. Inside that temple, the very heart of Maya timekeeping. But first, you take a detour. A trail leads you through a grove of rubber trees and saber trunks. The guide tells you to watch your step, not because of snakes, though, yes, those too, but because you're walking across what was once a sacred plaza where they aligned buildings to the solstices. Each stone underfoot was placed with celestial care. And here's your first reality twist. The Maya didn't separate space and time like we do. A plaza wasn't just a gathering spot, it was a calendar. A city layout was a cosmic diagram. Temples weren't just for worship, they were massive time machines made of stone, shadow, and starlight. Even the jungle seems to know what time it is. Cicadas buzz in shifting rhythms. A breeze picks up at precisely the moment the sun hits the pyramid's edge. That's not a coincidence. That's choreography set centuries ago. One mainstream historical fact. The pyramid at Chichen Itza, El Castillo, is aligned so that during the equinoxes, the shadow of a serpent slithers down its steps. Not metaphorically. Literally. A shadow snake. You can watch it. It happens every year. The Maya built that with no modern tools, just skywatching, math, and divine obsession. But here's a fringe tidbit. Some locals say the stones whisper if you press your ear to them at night. That might be superstition. Or maybe you just haven't tried it yet. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly intended all these alignments to be so precise, or if modern archaeologists are sometimes overinterpreting the patterns. It's the eternal academic debate: genius or coincidence. You brush your fingers along a crumbling glyph. The stone is warm. A nearby plaque offers a modern interpretation, but you ignore it. Better to listen to the stone itself, right? Beneath your feet lies the buried pulse of centuries. Bones. Offerings. A collapsed observatory, maybe. In the distance, you hear a low horn, conch shell, probably, and see the feathered priest raising a hand toward the sky. The crowd around him hushes. Children stop playing. A woman puts down her basket of maize. The moment thickens, almost humming. Then, you see him pull out something unexpected. It's not a sundial. Not a staff. It's a folded sheet of something brown. Thin, papery, and covered in symbols. It's tree bark. Not just any bark, though. This is amatl, processed from the inner layers of fig trees, boiled, pressed, and turned into something that might be the world's first notebook. These folded codices, accordion style, carry calendars, omens, stories, and sometimes doodles of gods wearing fancy shoes. This is where it all begins, time, tracked in bark and ink. The priest's hands are steady. He flips the folds open and begins to chant dates. You can't understand the words, but you don't need to. You feel the rhythm. The dates fall like footsteps. They're naming today not just Thursday, but its cosmic fingerprint. A full designation of when, in a universe that rarely repeats itself. Or rather, repeats itself, beautifully. You feel a shift. As if something inside you aligns with the jungle, the stone, the stars above. Time, here, is not a thing you chase. It's a companion, a pattern, a dance. And you've just taken your first step. You follow the priest down from the observatory, your eyes still adjusting from the blinding sunlight. He moves with the ease of someone who knows exactly where he is in the cosmic order of things. You, meanwhile, trip over a root and try to pretend you meant to do that. He turns, smiles politely, and beckons you closer. With a soft gesture, he hands you a narrow strip of something fibrous and soft. It's bark, freshly harvested, still damp, with a faint citrusy scent. This isn't trash. It's treasure. Welcome to your first Maya notebook. The Maya called it huun, made from the inner bark of wild fig trees. You watch artisans in the village scrape it smooth, boil it with lime to soften the fibers, then press and sun-dry it into crisp, foldable sheets. When joined in long strips and painted with brilliant pigments, reds from insects, blacks from soot, blues from crushed minerals, they became codices, books of time, prophecy, and celestial math. And yes, actual celestial math. You lean over a woman carefully painting glyphs onto a dry sheet. Each mark she makes, part frog, part abstract diagram, means something specific. A day, a god, an event. She's recording the date of a festival where people dress as jaguars and hurl chili peppers at each other. It's part spiritual celebration, part chaos, and part you better not blink. Mainstream historical fact. Only 4 original Maya codices survive today: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. They're all bark books, and they're dense with astronomy, rituals, and numerical tables, some predicting solar eclipses centuries in advance. These weren't bedtime stories. These were cosmic spreadsheets with attitude. But here's the quirky bit. Some of these bark pages doubled as calendars and divination tools and grocery lists. One page might record a solar event, the next might remind someone to offer maize beer to the rain god, Chark, because dry season tantrums are no joke. You sit with a young scribe who shows you how the Maya counted days. It starts simple enough, dots and bars. A dot means 1. A bar means 5. Count up by arranging them vertically. You smile. This is basically the math version of a pizza topping count. 3 dots and 2 bars. That's 13. But then things get cosmic. The Maya used a base 20 system, vigesimal, likely because humans have 10 fingers and 10 toes, nature's abacus. Numbers stacked vertically, each level multiplying by 20, except in the calendar, where the third level weirdly jumps to 360 instead of 400. Why? Because 360's close to the solar year. Even their exceptions are clever. Historians still argue whether this mathematical system developed purely from counting or if it was intentionally designed to track cosmic cycles. Some even suggest it evolved from knotted string systems, like those used by the Inca. Others think the Maya just liked keeping astronomers busy. You glance at a Codex page again. The scribe points to a glyph shaped like a monkey holding a staff. A jaw, she says. That's one of the 20-day names in the Tzolk'in, the sacred 260-day calendar. We'll get to that dance soon, but for now, know this: each combination of day name and number tells you what kind of energy the day carries. Want to harvest crops, build a house, or name your baby? Check the bark. Another scribe unfurls a longer codex, this one faded with age. The edges crackle slightly as it opens. You see overlapping layers of symbols, drawings, and red columns, each marking intervals of days. Some of these columns are made of little bean-like glyphs. Curious, you lean closer. They're cacao beans. Stylized, of course, but unmistakable. That's right. Beans are keeping time, too. The Maya didn't just eat or trade cacao, they counted with it. In some cities, cacao beans were used as currency, and bundles of 400 beans, called a cacao pie, could also represent numerical values in tribute logs and ritual timing. Imagine paying your rent in chocolate. Sweet, but also sticky if you drop it. You sit back and take in the sight: bark books drying on lines like laundry, beans piled in orderly heaps beside them, and scribes quietly painting time into memory. Then someone calls out, a child's voice, and a man rushes over with a scroll. Something big just happened. A birth. An eclipse. A rare alignment. You're not sure, but the excitement is real. The bark scroll is held up for all to see. The priest nods, and the crowd applauds lightly. It's official. This moment has been recorded in the fabric of Maya time. And yes, the fabric is bark. You start to wonder what else these books once held. Entire libraries of codices existed before Spanish colonization. Thousands, maybe. Historians still mourn their loss. Most were burned, literally incinerated, because someone decided they were the devil's work. But fragments survived, carved into stone, painted on pottery, and remembered in oral traditions. There's a fringe belief that hidden codices still exist, buried beneath temples, walled inside tombs, or protected by modern Maya lineages who refuse to reveal them. Can't blame them, really. Would you hand over your family secrets to someone with matches? You tuck the thought away as you help roll up one of the drying bark pages. It's warm from the sun and surprisingly durable. 1,000 years ago, someone like you might have done this exact thing under different stars, wearing fancier feathers, maybe, but still just as careful. Bark and beans. Paper and cacao. That's the rhythm of Maya time. As the sun lowers and the shadows lengthen across the plaza, the priest lifts his hands again. The day is ending. Another entry for the bark scroll. You wonder, how will you record this day? You didn't just learn about Maya timekeeping. You touched it. You rolled it. You probably got a splinter from it. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of this jungle evening, another scribe dips her brush and begins to write the next line. By now, you've held time in your hands, literally, soft strips of bark and lines of celestial math curling like jungle vines across pages. But today, something else catches your eye. Beans. So many beans. You blink. They're everywhere. Cacao beans, stacked in baskets and spilling across a temple courtyard. Dark, glossy, and oddly well behaved for a food product left under the tropical sun. You crouch down beside a merchant who's inspecting each bin like it's a tiny gem. She holds one up to the light, then plinks it into a bowl with others. You're in the heart of a Maya marketplace, and while your nose is drawn to roasting maize and honey tamales, your brain is starting to notice something strange. People are counting the beans. Not just trading them. Counting them. Carefully. Intentionally. Like math homework disguised as lunch. You wander further and see a scribe, his head bent over a wooden tablet. His marking rows and columns next to symbols for cacao. There's a tallied list of what looks like towns, alongside bin amounts. You've stumbled into a royal accounting log. The Maya elite didn't just use beans for baking or bartering, they used them to mark time. Here's your mainstream fact. Cacao beans were used as currency throughout Mesoamerica, especially among the Maya. One rabbit might cost 10 beans. A decent turkey? Maybe 200. But during ceremonial events like calendar transitions, solstices, or royal anniversaries, beans became tribute offerings, tallied and scheduled down to the day. The merchant next to you grins, probably noticing your confused face. She hands you a cacao pod, heavy, fragrant, with seeds rattling inside. It's a time capsule. Each seed, a marker of labor, ceremony, and exchange. The Maya didn't separate economy and ritual. Beans were sacred, sure, but also practical. Some archaeologists argue the bean counting wasn't just commerce or religion, it was a way to quantify solar time. One fringe theory suggests that some regions used cacao bean bundles to represent solar intervals, counting days or months until specific ceremonies. The beans became a kind of analog calendar. Tactile. Snackable. Occasionally miscounted when someone got hungry. And here's where it gets even weirder. You're ushered into a dim, incense-filled room. A priest stands in front of a stone table, covered in glyphs, tiny piles of ash, and you guessed it, beans. He isn't eating them. He's sorting them into patterns. 12 beans in a circle. 5 in a cross. 2 lines of 10. It's like divination meets Sudoku. These aren't just offerings. They're calendar props. Used during ceremonies to visualize upcoming celestial events. Imagine a giant countdown clock made of chocolate. He places a red-painted bean in the center of the circle and mutters a date, 10K and 7 pop. That's a full-day stamp, part sacred cycle, part solar year. You don't need to know all the math yet, you will, but you sense the weight of it. This day matters. He places a second bean beside it. A different color, maybe dyed with crushed annatto. That one represents Venus. Venus, in Maya astronomy, is a very big deal. The planet was associated with war, omens, and royal authority. Its cycles were tracked so closely that entire wars were timed to its appearances. Historians still argue whether these Venus-aligned attacks were based on spiritual belief or clever military psychology. I mean, if you always attack when the enemy's astrologer says do not travel, you're either deeply faithful or just playing 4D chess. You watch the priest build his little bean calendar on the table. Each placement is a decision. Each configuration a date. Some glyphs carved into the table nearby echo the arrangement, dots and bars beside stylized cacao pods. You realize this isn't a ritual for show. It's administration. Spiritual and logistical. And in true Maya fashion, it all looks suspiciously delicious. Later, you're invited to a festival where children dress as maize gods and perform skits involving jaguars, frogs, and what looks like a cosmic turtle. Afterward, people toss beans onto a cloth circle in the center of the square. You ask what it means. One man, chewing a honeyed tamale, shrugs. It's how we track the sun, he says. Or maybe how we thank it. Or maybe just because we've always done it. Classic Maya response. You sit down beside a young girl counting her beans, 20 in a stack, 5 in another. She's not just playing. She's learning to track days. Some children are taught to read by glyphs, others by beans. One small miscount and your birthday lands during a thunderstorm festival. Oops. And here's the open scholarly debate. Did everyone understand this system, or was being counting knowledge reserved for the elite and priests? Some argue that rural Maya communities had their own folk variations, been rituals for planting cycles and local holidays, while the official calendar remained with the cities. You're handed a small pouch of cacao before you leave. It's soft and warm from being held in someone's hands all day. The beans inside clink gently, just a few dozen. But somehow, it feels like you're holding a week. Maybe two. You take one out, roll it between your fingers, and look up at the setting sun. A flock of birds crosses the horizon. Somewhere behind you, a priest calls out another date. You smile. You get it now. Time isn't just something you read, or write, or chant. Sometimes, you taste it. The jungle is loud tonight. Crickets chirp like tiny maracas, and frogs sing backup vocals in a language you'll never quite translate. But overhead, the real star of the show isn't an animal, it's the sky. You look up, and there it is, a canvas of shimmering dots, blazing planets, and one glowing line that cuts across everything, the Milky Way. The ancient Maya called it the Sakbi, the White Road. And tonight, you're going to walk it. Well, not literally. You're still in your comfy hammock. But your mind, it's already ascending the stone steps of a temple observatory, joining a Maya astronomer at the top. He doesn't speak much, but you can tell he doesn't need to. His eyes are already fixed on the heavens. The Maya were skywatchers, big time. That's your mainstream fact. Their entire worldview, from agriculture to politics, was built on the movement of celestial bodies. You think your horoscope is intense? These folks scheduled royal weddings, battles, and human sacrifices based on planetary alignments. You squint at the stars with him. No telescopes. No apps. Just trained eyes, centuries of notes, and stone structures aligned to the rising and setting points of the sun, moon, and Venus. You tilt your head and spot it, Venus, glowing like a diamond with ambition. Next to you, the astronomer unrolls a bark paper codex. It's covered in numbers and glyphs, tiny drawings of gods with elaborate headdresses, jaguars with teeth like corn kernels, and spirals representing cycles of time. One section, densely packed with red dots and black bars, catches your eye. It's the Venus table from the Dresden Codex. You've just met one of the oldest astronomical charts in human history. It tracks Venus's movements with uncanny precision, its 584-day cycle, its appearances as morning star and evening star, and its vanishing periods. The Maya calculated it to the day. To the day. Fringe tidbit time. Some modern researchers believe Maya astronomers might have corrected for leap years, not in the clunky Gregorian way, but through subtle shifts in ritual observance. They didn't need extra days. They had Venus. And corn. You point to the codex, curious. The astronomer taps a series of dates, then points to the horizon. You follow his hand and, wouldn't you know it, right on cue, Venus begins to rise. A slow shimmer. Almost like a candle flickering into being. A chill skitters down your spine. You're watching what ancient rulers watched, what calendar priests obsessed over. Venus wasn't just pretty, it was powerful. Its cycles marked times of war and peace, favor and warning. One glyph even depicts Venus raining darts from the sky. Lovely. Historians still argue whether these celestial interpretations were symbolic or based on real atmospheric phenomena, like meteor showers coinciding with Venus's phases. Others say it's all metaphor. Either way, nobody ignored Venus. You glance back at the codex. This thing was no light read. You'd need a PhD in glyphs and maybe a second life to decode it fully. But even in your beginner state, you see the rhythm. The repetition. The harmony. Time, for the Maya, wasn't a straight line. It looped, spiraled, folded back into itself like a snake swallowing its tail, which, surprise, is a common glyph, too. The astronomer shows you how he tracks the solstices and equinoxes. He points to a carved slit in the temple wall. Twice a year, sunlight passes directly through it, landing on a specific glyph on the opposite side. Like clockwork, except made of rock and light and a little bit of magic. You ask, timidly, how they knew when to build. He raises an eyebrow. We watched, he says. Then we waited. And that's the core of Maya timekeeping. Patience. Observation. Calculation. No apps. No batteries. Just sky, bark, beans, and brain. As the night deepens, the stars shift subtly. You lie back and start to recognize patterns, not just constellations, but relationships between stars and cycles. You remember the girl counting beans, the priest with his table calendar, the scribe painting glyphs in careful rows. They weren't just measuring time, they were participating in it. Some nights, like this one, were devoted entirely to observation. No ceremonies, no markets, no noise. Just silence and sky. You imagine 1,000 years of Maya stargazers watching this same stretch of universe. You feel small, but weirdly included. Then comes the ritual. The astronomer produces a small bundle from a cloth bag, jade beads, red string, a carved obsidian mirror. He sets them on the stone and begins to chant. Not loud. More like a murmur. A vibration. Each phrase timed with the blinking of a star. You lean in. The mirror reflects Venus now, tiny and clear. The astronomer nods toward it, then toward you. This, he seems to say, is the heartbeat of it all. Time doesn't tick. It pulses. Another priest joins him, carrying a torch and a folded codex. Together, they mark the date. A new cycle begins tonight. Somewhere far below, bells are ringing softly, and the town is lighting fires. Not for warmth, but for continuity. The Maya calendar wasn't just about marking days. It was about holding space for gods, for people, for memory. You close your eyes as the chanting continues. You can still feel the vibration in your chest. A Venus pulse. A star beat. You think of your own calendar back home. All numbers and boxes and deadlines. It suddenly feels flat. Like cereal without milk. Efficient, maybe, but not alive. Here, every star matters. Every bean. Every scrap of bark. You open your eyes one last time and catch a shooting star slipping across the Sac B. The white road shimmers above you like a promise whispered from the past. Tomorrow, you'll dive deeper into the Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred calendar. But tonight, you rest. Beneath the stars. Among timekeepers. In a world where the sky is your clock and the future is always a little bit circular. You wake with the soft light of dawn licking at your eyelids, the kind of golden haze that suggests even time itself is yawning. The jungle is quieter now, dew clinging to leaves like tiny glass beads. A distant monkey hoots once, then thinks better of it. You're still stretched out under the stars, though a few have faded and something presses against your palm. It's a thin strip of bark paper, carefully folded. You open it and see glyphs. A new set, different from what you saw last night with the astronomer. More rhythmic, more intimate. And next to the glyphs, a familiar pattern. Dots and bars. Like musical notation, but for time. This, your guide says as she joins you, is the Tzolk'in, the Maya sacred calendar. Your new obsession. Mainstream fact alert. The Tzolk'in was a 260-day cycle, made up of 20 named days, combined with 13 numbers that rotated in sequence. Each day had a unique combination, creating 260 distinct dates. No months. No weeks. Just a perfect little loop that repeated forever. You blink. Why 260, you ask. She smiles. Because it works. And she's right, 260 wasn't just mystical, it was functional. Scholars suggest it matched the human gestation period. A cosmic pregnancy calendar, if you will. Others argue it was based on solar zenith passage cycles in the Maya lowlands, times when the sun passes directly overhead. Some think it lined up with agricultural rhythms, especially maize planting and harvesting. Historians still argue whether the number 260 was purely astronomical, agricultural, or physiological. The truth is, it was probably all of the above. Maya logic is nothing if not layered. You follow her through the village, where people greet each other not by names, but by day signs. One man is Jaw, the boy next to him 3. It's less like birthdays and more like astrological identities. Your day sign reveals your essence, your cosmic fingerprint. Quirky tidbit time, some towns still name children after their Tzolk'in birth date. Little Tenkayan might grow up knowing he's connected to the lizard glyph associated with growth, seeds, and new beginnings. If you're 1 Kimi, well, let's just say your family might keep an extra eye on you during thunderstorms. The Tzolk'in wasn't used for shopping lists or weather reports. It was for ritual. Priests consulted it before everything, from planting crops to naming rulers to choosing when to perform healing ceremonies. You didn't dare sneeze on the wrong day. Bad things happened on unlucky combinations, and good days were booked months in advance, like cosmic wedding venues. You watch a ceremony in progress. A priest, painted head to toe in white clay, holds up a shell trumpet and calls out today's day, 6 Ben. The gathered crowd nods in respect. It's a day of growth, of journeys, and staffs of power. A good day to travel, or to make a new plan. And maybe to repot that stubborn fern. He tosses flower petals into a fire, each one corresponding to a day name. The flames flicker, blue, then orange, then green. You don't question it. Maya fire has moods. You're handed a bark paper wheel. 2 concentric circles, one with the 20-day names, one with the 13 numbers. It spins. Slowly. Deliberately. You turn it, and there it is, your own sacred day, revealed. You won't share it. It feels personal, sacred. Like someone just gave you your real name. This wheel is how the calendar turns. Every day, a new combination. The same 13 numbers. The same 20 names. Always shifting, always rejoining in new, meaningful ways. You think back to the bean patterns and the Venus cycles. This calendar is quieter, but no less precise. It governs births, deaths, and everything in between. You visit a midwife who tracks pregnancies by Tzolk'in. Her walls are covered in charcoal drawings of glyphs. She explains how different day signs affect the baby's soul. One child born on Tuetsnab might be sharp-tongued, while another on 9 Chuen might grow into a gifted artisan or a prankster. Sometimes both. She winks. We all have 2 faces, she says. You chuckle, realizing the Maya didn't see time as a neutral backdrop. It was alive. A co-creator. It shaped people and was shaped by them. You weren't just born into time, you were born with it. The Tzolk'in governed the rhythm of ceremonial life. Every 20-day cycle had a name. Some periods were associated with feasting, others with fasting. You see preparations for a Wayeb cleansing, the short, unlucky 5-day period between the Tzolk'in and solar calendar cycles. Doors are shut. Mirrors are covered. People stay close to home. It's like Mercury retrograde, but with fire offerings. One elder explains how each 260-day cycle was tracked by specialists called daykeepers. Their job was to memorize the entire sequence, recite it daily, and advise the community. No cheat sheets. No calculators. Just memory and reverence. You sit beside one such keeper, his eyes clouded with age but his voice firm. He taps his walking stick in rhythm as he chants the days. His hands make little flicks with each new name, like he's turning pages no one else can see. You ask if he ever forgets a day. He doesn't answer. He just smiles. Later, you watch children learning to draw their day signs in charcoal, some curved like animals, others spiraled or cross-hatched. One boy stares at 7K for a long time, then draws it wrong on purpose. Everyone laughs. Even the gods, you suspect. You step away, spinning your bark wheel again. A new day, a new identity. Every combination a story, every number a rhythm. Time, to the Maya, was never just passing. It was dancing. You've been dancing with numbers all day. Or maybe they've been dancing with you. Either way, your head is still spinning as you step out into the late afternoon haze. Parrots squawk like they've got somewhere to be, and the air smells like roasted maize and wet stone. But now, it's time to meet the Tzolkin's older, beefier cousin, the Hab calendar. It's less mysterious, more practical, kind of like the Maya version of your desk calendar, but carved in stone and spiritually loaded. The Hab is a solar calendar, 365 days long, just like ours. Mainstream fact, right here, it consists of 18 months of 20 days each, followed by a slightly terrifying 5-day period called Wayeb, which you caught a glimpse of last section. We'll get to that spookiness in a minute. You watch a scribe mark today's Hab date on a shell with a bone stylus, 14 pop. That's the first month. Pop sounds cheerful, like confetti. But in Maya, it refers to a mat, as in governance, rulership. Suddenly more serious. Now here's the twist. The Hab wasn't used alone. It constantly interlocked with the Tzolkin, like gears in a giant cosmic machine. Every day had two designations, one from the 260-day Tzolkin and one from the 365-day Hab. The combination of the two formed a calendar round, a cycle of 18,980 days, or about 52 solar years. Only after that could the exact same date combo repeat. You blink. That means the Maya didn't celebrate yearly birthdays. Your personal day name wouldn't come around again for over half a century. Kind of makes your half-birthday feel needy now, huh? Quirky tidbit time. Some villages tracked the calendar round with colored beans, black for Tzolkin days, white for Hab days, arranged in concentric circles on bark mats. When the two beans lined up just right, it was party time or doom, depending on the combination. And speaking of doom, let's talk Wayeb, those 5 leftover days at the end of the Hab. The Maya considered them dangerous, liminal. The boundary between years wasn't a clean break, it was a cosmic gap. The gods were on coffee break, the protective spirits were off duty, and anything could happen. During Wayeb, people stayed home. No big decisions, no travel, definitely no weddings. They avoided rivers and didn't comb their hair because who wants to invite a wandering spirit into your scalp? Historians still argue whether Wayeb rituals were more about spiritual hygiene or psychological reset. Was it fear of divine chaos, or just a clever way to give people a break before the new year kicked in? You walk through a courtyard where a Wayeb ritual is just wrapping up. Smoke curls around stone altars, and a priest drops maize kernels into the fire one by one, 5 days, 5 offerings. No chanting. Just silence. It's eerie, but peaceful, like the last page of a book that's about to be rewritten. Back in the city center, the Hab keeps the rhythm of earthly life. Unlike the spiritual Tzolkin, this calendar governs agriculture, construction, and civic rituals. You see builders consulting Hab dates before laying a new plaza stone. Market vendors set up based on the month's energy. Mall is good for rain-based rituals. Muwan is linked to birds and fire, great for chicken barbecue, terrible for dry season farming. You ask a merchant how she remembers all the meanings. She shrugs. You don't remember them, she says. You live them. That line stays with you. In a shady corner of the plaza, an elder shows you a circular stone with carvings around the edge, one glyph for each of the 18 months. He places a bean on yak skin, the 4th month, associated with the sun god. The stone gets warm under your fingers. Each month has its own flavor, some vibrant, some cautious. Kayankin is for yellowing leaves. Pax signals music and war. Sek is foggy, uncertain. You start to wonder if our months, January, February, etc., are just kind of boring. The Hab didn't just track the sun, it choreographed society. Taxes, tributes, festivals, farming, all scheduled according to this solar cycle. You peek into a temple archive, where bark paper codices record past events by Hab month and day. It's history, but pulsing with ritual. One scribe points to a page. 10 Kumkyu, she says. That's when the rain ended 5 years ago. We marked it with blue dye and bird feathers. You nod solemnly, pretending you totally understand the glyphs. In truth, they still look like squiggles doing cosplay. But you're learning. Slowly. You're taken to a calendar wall, an actual wall etched with Hab glyphs in neat rows. Beside each, small holes where offerings were once placed. The caretaker explains how these weren't just visual calendars, they were interactive. People touched the days, whispered into them, left tokens of corn, jade, or chocolate. You try it. You place your hand over Sots, the bat month. It feels echoey, like touching a doorknob right before thunder. Maybe you're imagining it. Maybe not. Night falls, and the torches are lit. The Hab month is ending, and a new one is about to begin. But unlike our modern calendars, there's no confetti, no champagne. Just silence, breath, and soft flute music. You sit by the fire and look again at the bark wheel. This time, you understand the mechanics better. Tzolk'in spins one way. Hab spins another. Together, they form a rotating cosmic lock. A calendar of enormous length and staggering precision. You do the math in your head. 52 years per calendar round. That's a human lifetime. One repeat. If you're lucky. You realize now, the Maya weren't just measuring time. They were measuring significance. Every day was an intersection. A crossroad of sky and soil, of sacred and mundane. Miss it, and you lose more than an appointment, you lose alignment with the universe. And that's something your calendar app doesn't quite cover. You wake to the gentle thunk of something dropping beside your head. A cacao pod. Bright yellow, warm from the sun, and suspiciously placed as if the gods themselves left it for you. Your guide snickers. The calendar gods accept edible bribes, she says. Just don't let the cacao rot, there's a date for that too. You're beginning to understand that in Maya timekeeping, nothing is random. Not even your chocolate snack. Today, it's time to crack open something big, the long count calendar. The deep time engine. The Maya's cosmic calculator that didn't just track years or generations, but epochs. When the Tzolk'in and Hab were the watches on your wrist, the long count was the giant grandfather clock ticking behind the stars. Mainstream fact, the long count is a vigesimal, base 20, numerical system used by the Maya to track time from a fixed starting point, what we call August 11th, 3114 BCE in the Gregorian calendar. To the Maya, that date was the birth of the current world age. You glance up at a towering stone stela. Carved into it are rows of dots and bars, numbers stacked vertically like a ladder. Your guide runs her hand over them. 13.0.0.0.0, she whispers. That's the big one. The reset. The system works in units. 1 Kayin equals 1 day. 1 winal equals 20 days. 1 ton equals 360 days. 1 Ka ton equals 7,200 days, about 20 tons. 1 Bak ton equals 144,000 days, about 394 years. So 13.0.0.0.0 means 13 Bak tons have passed since the Maya believed time began. That's the infamous date, December 21st, 2012. You remember the memes. The apocalypse jokes. The panic bought bottled water. But the Maya, they weren't predicting the end. They were just rolling the odometer. Historians still argue whether the 13th Bak ton was meant to be symbolic, cataclysmic, or just a regular rollover like New Year's Eve with extra fireworks. But to the Maya, it was sacred math, time returning to zero so the cycle could begin again. You pass another stella, weathered but still proud. This one marks the birth of a king. The date, 9.12.2.0.16. That's 1,334 years after the world began, give or take. You do some quick calculations and realize that means they recorded birthdays, deaths, royal accessions, everything using long count dates, sometimes stacked with the Tzolk'in and Hab. Triple timekeeping. You wonder how many ancient scribes cried into their corn beer over deadlines. The Maya didn't just log events, they synchronized them with cosmic rhythms. Say a king was crowned on 9.16.4.10.8 and that day matched 3 Lamat 6 Kayankin in the other systems. That wasn't coincidence, it was orchestration. They waited for the right alignment. You visit a temple chamber where an old Codex fragment is kept. The bark paper sheet shows long count dates charting eclipses, Venus appearances, and wars. Some dates stretch thousands of years forward or backward. That's right, the Maya counted negative time, too. They wrote about events that happened before the beginning of the world, like gods being born in deep time. Imagine if your family scrapbook included photos from before the Big Bang. Quirky tidbit time. One long count inscription mentions a deity whose birth is dated over 90 million years ago. No, really. That's some Jurassic Park level myth-making. Either the Maya had wild imaginations or some seriously committed record keepers. You watch a stonemason working on a replica stela. He taps each dot and bar into soft limestone with a jade chisel. Why limestone, you ask? Because it lasts longer than we do, he says. Fair point. The long count wasn't just cosmic, it was bureaucratic. Rulers used it to legitimize power. A king born on a rare date. Clearly divine. A temple aligned to a significant Bak ton shift. Proof of favor from the gods. These weren't coincidences, they were campaign posters carved in stone. But here's where it gets slippery. Not all Maya cities used the long count. Some favored local systems. Others stopped recording it entirely after certain dynasties collapsed. Historians still argue whether the long count was universally understood or more of a royal flex. Like having a Rolex made of obsidian. As night falls, your guide takes you to a ruined observatory. Stars burst overhead, and the Milky Way cuts the sky like a river of crushed pearl. She points to a glyph carved into the wall. It's counting down, she says. This building tracks a Ka ton ending. You feel a hush settle around you. The night, the glyph, the stars, they're all participating in some ancient math you barely understand. But it feels right. Like the world is exhaling. You pull out a strip of bark paper and try writing a long count date. You get the KNS right. Maybe the Winals. The rest turns to jelly in your head. Still, it feels powerful, like time itself is curling around your fingers. You whisper 13.0.0.0.0 into the dark, just to see how it tastes. Feels like thunder and honey. That cacao pod from earlier. You crack it open by the fire. Sweet, bitter, earthy. The taste of something old. You chew slowly, watching the embers rise like flecks of burnt time. The long count didn't predict an end. It promised continuity, a return to beginnings, a second chance baked into the calendar itself. And maybe that's what all of this is, not countdowns, but invitations. To begin again. Just better. The sun rises like melted gold spilling over the jungle canopy, and you're already ankle deep in mud. Not because you're lost, well, okay, partially, but because today you're walking the sacred path of Venus. No, not metaphorically. You're actually being guided along a causeway the Maya once used to align temples with the morning star. This section is about obsession. And not just any obsession, astronomy, Maya style. They didn't just look up and say pretty stars. They logged positions, tracked cycles, built observatories. And they did it with the kind of patience you only get from generations of skywatching and a really good supply of tamales. Mainstream fact, the Maya tracked Venus with stunning accuracy, calculating its synodic cycle, how long it takes to return to the same position in the sky, as 584 days, just 2 days off modern calculations. No telescopes. No calculators. Just eyeballs and time. Your guide points to a worn glyph painted on a cave wall. That's Chakek, Venus, she says. It meant war, sacrifice, rebirth. Also gardening. It depends. Classic Maya, everything meant something, and usually 3 things at once. You sit in a quiet temple chamber where a priest astronomer might have once crouched with his nose inches from a narrow stone slit. Through it, twice a year, Venus rises right in that gap. First light spills through like it's been waiting centuries for this exact moment. Historians still argue whether these alignments were primarily religious, agricultural, or military. Did they plan battles by Venus's moods? Or just harvest corn more efficiently? Maybe both. Because if there's anything you've learned, it's that Maya timekeeping wasn't about compartmentalizing. It was about synthesis. They tracked eclipses, solstices, planetary movements, and zenith sun events when the sun sits directly overhead, casting no shadow. Ever seen a temple where the corners align with shadowless noon? The Maya built that. No lasers. No spirit levels. Just relentless observation. Quirky tidbit, there's a temple where, on certain days, sunlight pours into the inner sanctum and hits a sculpture's eyes exactly. The god lights up like he's about to drop a mixtape. You hike to a high ridge where an ancient observatory looms, just a few weathered stones and a notch in the horizon. But stand in the right spot, and the rising sun slots neatly into that notch during solstice. It's subtle, sacred geometry at its best. And here's something else. They didn't just observe, they predicted. Codices, those folded bark paper books again, include tables for eclipses and Venus appearances, often hundreds of years into the future. You flip through a replica codex, amazed at the red and black ink diagrams, stylized stars, jaws of serpents, columns of day signs. It looks like abstract art. But it's math. It's prophecy. It's astronomy in metaphor drag. The most famous of these tables? The Dresden Codex Venus table. It logs 5 Venus cycles, 2,920 days, divided into 4 phases. Heliacal rise, when Venus first appears in the dawn. Greatest brightness. Disappearance. Evening star rise. Each phase came with omens. Some good. Some not so much. Like, don't travel west on day 3 after Venus reappears or your canoe will flip and you'll get eaten by a crocodile. Specific and terrifying. You sip water beneath a stela inscribed with planetary glyphs. The guide draws in the dirt, sketching how the Maya watched the Pleiades, Mars, and Jupiter too. Venus got top billing, but it wasn't the only show in the sky. Here's the catch, All this precision, this obsessive watching, wasn't just for curiosity. It was ritual performance. You didn't just record a solar eclipse, you offered something when it came. Maybe a jade bead. Maybe blood. Maybe a loud song into the void. Some temples have holes in the roof. Not for ventilation, for sky access. You lay on the floor and watch clouds pass through the aperture. Now imagine lying there, waiting all night, every night, just to spot Venus blinking above the horizon. No smartphone. No Netflix. Just dedication, or possibly boredom in fancy dress. Historians still argue whether the Maya truly understood the mechanics behind retrograde motion when planets appear to move backward in the sky, or whether they just logged the phenomena without explanation. Either way, their charts were accurate. Their calendars, aligned. Their temples, mathematical instruments hidden in art. And in case you're wondering, yes, they even folded these cycles into their daily lives. Your birthday? It might align with a Venus station. Your marriage date? Better not fall on a day when Venus goes invisible. People avoided naming babies during eclipse windows, just in case. One fringe theory suggests some high-ranking astronomer priests used mirrors to amplify Venus sightings, polished obsidian or water bowls positioned at temple tops. The optics are fuzzy, literally, but it's not impossible. You imagine a figure standing on the edge of a roof, mirror in hand, waiting for a god to wink through the sky. You climb a last stone stair to a small altar. No roof, just sky. The stars blink alive. Venus is rising, brilliant and steady, like a spotlight from a celestial stagehand. You whisper, "Chak-ek," like the scribes once did. It feels less like science and more like worship. And isn't that the point? The Maya didn't separate astronomy from religion, math from magic. They braided it all together, so tightly that every star chart was also a prayer, and every eclipse was both omen and opportunity. So you lie back on the stone, Venus glowing like a pinhole in the heavens, and you think, this isn't just about time. It's about presence. About looking up and remembering that you're part of a pattern too. Even if you're mostly just here for the beans and bark paper. You're lying on a thatched mat now, half asleep, watching a smoky fire coil up into the night. A storyteller sits across from you, scratching glyphs into the dirt with a stick. He's not a priest or an astronomer, but you quickly realize, this guy is just as serious about time. Only now, it's not stars he's watching, it's stories. Welcome to the Maya way of memory. And not the kind stored in journals or grainy photos, this is oral timekeeping. Tonight, you'll discover how myths, dynasties, and sky gods were stitched together across generations through tales so specific they functioned as living calendars. Mainstream fact: Maya histories weren't just inscribed on monuments, they were performed, sung, danced, and memorized. The Popol Vuh, their epic creation myth, contains multiple time markers woven into its narrative structure. You're not just hearing a bedtime story, you're hearing a clock tick through metaphor. The fire crackles. The storyteller begins. Before the maize, before the sun rose, before people were made of flesh, there were the twins. Ah yes, the hero twins, Hunahpu and Zbalanque. Tricksters. Warriors. Ball players. The ancient audience favorite. You listen, entranced, as they battle underworld lords, plant their father's head in a tree, and defeat death itself. But buried inside the magic is a timeline. The myth plays out over calendrical stages. Each act corresponds to certain day names, celestial events, or long count cycles. Historians still argue whether the Popol Vuh was meant as strict history or sacred allegory, but either way, it's a map of cosmic time. Events don't just happen, they're anchored in calendar logic. Quirky tidbit: one version of the story aligns the twins' resurrection with the heliacal rise of Venus. So yes, even their resurrections had timestamps. You realize the stories serve a purpose beyond entertainment. They act as mnemonic devices, oral flash drives. A tale told with correct sequencing could jog memories of seasonal changes, eclipse years, or royal successions. Young scribes, your guide explains, were trained to memorize these sequences like actors rehearsing a script. A single misstep, a missed day name, a wrong lunar phase, and the whole system wobbled. You shuffle closer to the fire, where the storyteller now recites a royal genealogy. Not from a book. Not from a stela. Just from his head. Smoke Jaguar begat Stoneclaw, born on 5 Lamat 4 Kaayab, who built the East Temple when Venus vanished. It goes on. And on. Dozens of rulers, each tied to calendar dates. You start to lose track, but he doesn't. His tone changes subtly every few names, an embedded rhythm, a kind of verbal scaffolding. You get the feeling it's been passed down exactly like this for hundreds of years. And while the Maya were famous for writing glyphs on bark paper and carving dates in stone, not everyone could read. So how did the common folks keep time? They sang it. Ceremonial chants often began with date names. Ball game rituals included calendar alignments. And farming. You guessed it, accompanied by rhymed instructions keyed to the Hab and Tzolkin. Harvest when 9 is strong. Don't plant on the day of dogs. That sort of thing. Fringe theory time. Some linguists believe the Maya embedded calendar logic into their poetic grammar. Like Easter eggs in their syntax. You think back to your high school poetry class and suddenly feel very inadequate. Even cooking had temporal rules. One village elder tells you, "We never make tamales when the moon is lazy." You ask what that means. She points to the sky. When it hides too soon, it's not in the mood for flavor. Okay, fair enough. You visit a stone platform where dancers used to perform stories in full regalia. Feathers, bells, body paint, each costume element tied to a myth, each step part of a remembered date. Watching a performance wasn't just fun, it was a refresher course in the history of the cosmos. And then there's the ball game, the sacred sport played in courts shaped like giant is. To you, it might look like soccer meets volleyball with a dash of high-stakes trampoline, but for the Maya, the game reenacted the hero twins' underworld trials, often synced with solstices or Venus cycles. You run your hand along the edge of a ball court. It's surprisingly smooth, like it was used yesterday. You picture players bouncing a heavy rubber ball off hips and thighs, watched by priests who know exactly what date it is and what god they're appeasing. There's a glyph carved into the court wall. Your guide traces it. This one tells us the game was played during 11K and 17 pop. An unlucky combo. Might have ended in blood. You shift uncomfortably. Here's a quirky one. Some villages used riddles to embed dates. Not just for fun, but to pass them down disguised. I rise when the bat hides and the turtle hums. I fall when the maize sings. That's not just poetry, it's a marker for a zenith sun event. Historians still argue whether these oral traditions preserved exact date systems or simply echoed elite practices. But either way, it worked. Dates persisted even when the cities collapsed and scribes disappeared. You find yourself humming a chant under your breath later that night. You don't know what it means, but it sounds old. Like bark, and beans, and stars wrapped in verse. It's comforting, in a way. That time wasn't just carved or inked, it was spoken, performed, remembered out loud. Like a song you sing so many times it becomes your heartbeat. So tonight, when you fall asleep beneath your mosquito net, you think of the storyteller's voice, rising and falling like a tide. And you wonder, how much time is buried in your own stories, just waiting to be heard? You wake to the sound of something sharp being scraped across wood. A rhythmic, almost meditative rasping. Turns out, it's a scribe, carefully etching glyphs into a slab of bark paper. The smell of crushed pigment, charcoal, chilly, limestone drifts through the hut. Welcome to timekeeping as art, where history isn't just recorded, it's painted, carved, and sometimes even buried. Today, you'll explore how Maya time lived in objects, codices, stele, pottery, even bones. This is where bark and beans become brush and canvas, turning calendars into masterpieces. Mainstream fact: the Maya had at least 4 codices that survived Spanish destruction: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. They were made of ficus tree bark, flattened and coated with lime plaster, then accordion folded into pages. And on those pages, calendrical tables, deity charts, lunar predictions, and enough celestial math to make your high school brain weep. You lean over a replica of the Dresden Codex. The glyphs look alive: stylized birds, fire serpents, jaguar gods. Everything has eyes. Everything seems to be watching you back. But beyond the flair lies method. The pages function like spreadsheets from another universe, day counts organized in columns, glyph clusters repeating in rhythmic cycles. Venus phases here, eclipse warnings there. It's part almanac, part spiritual guidebook, and possibly the world's most anxiety-inducing planner. Quirky tidbit: some of the Codex pages include tiny bean-shaped symbols believed to mark counting intervals. Yes, the humble bean sneaks back in again, helping priests tick off days like a barista crossing shifts. And these books weren't tossed in drawers. They were ritual items, handled with reverence, consulted during ceremonies, often stored in temple sanctuaries or high-status homes. To own one was to hold time in your hands. You watch the scribe mix pigment: ground cinnabar for red, soot for black, indigo plant for blue. He dips a stylus made from vulture bone into the paste and begins painting a long count date: 9.12.2.0.16. That's April 6th, 674 CE to us. But to him, it's a portal to an event so sacred, it had to be sealed in color. Historians still argue whether scribes improvised glyph combinations or followed strict manuals. Some think creativity was encouraged, others say glyphs had to match divine templates exactly or risk cosmic misalignment. You imagine messing up a single dot and accidentally predicting the end of the world on someone's birthday. Outside, in the crumbling ruins of a once mighty city, you find a stela, a tall stone slab, etched with date glyphs, kingly titles, and war records. These were the billboards of ancient Maya cities, public announcements of power and chronology. The equivalent of "on this day, our ruler beat your ruler, and also built a pyramid. You're welcome." The sun hits the edge of the stela just right, casting shadows in the glyphs. Your guide whispers, "These shadows matter." Turns out, stele were often aligned with solar positions, so on certain days, the carvings would glow or darken at specific moments. Literal sundials of political propaganda. You run your hand along a row of dots and bars. Each one a number. A day. A breath. It's tactile time, meant to be touched, not just read. And it wasn't just big stone monuments. Maya pottery often held date glyphs marking when it was made or used in rituals. You see a bowl labeled with Tenajor 13 Muwen, a feast day, maybe, or the anniversary of some now forgotten god's favorite snack. That bowl might have been used only once a year, for a single sacred stew. One odd piece catches your eye, a drinking cup etched with glyphs and painted with dancing skeletons. Your guide explains it was likely tied to death rituals and lunar cycles. "Drink from this," she says, "and remember your bones will join the sky." Comforting. Back in the artisan hut, you meet a bone carver. He holds up a femur, not human, thank goodness, and begins incising date glyphs into it with obsidian. This wasn't uncommon. Elite Maya sometimes recorded important dates on bones, later buried with the dead or kept as heirlooms. You imagine inheriting grandpa's time-coded tibia. Family traditions, Maya style. Fringe theory. Some scholars believe these time-inscribed bones were used in divination rituals, shaken or cast like dice, read for omens. A morbid but efficient way to consult your ancestors and your calendar in one go. Even jewelry wasn't immune. You see jade pendants with tiny glyphs scratched into their backs, personal date amulets, maybe tied to a birth sign or protective period. Wearing your calendar, way ahead of smartwatch fashion. And we haven't even gotten to the buildings. The Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque includes one of the longest carved texts in the Maya world, over 600 glyphs chronicling the reign of Pakal the Great, from birth to death, all tied to long count dates. His tomb lies beneath the temple, effectively making it a stone biography overlaid on a celestial timeline. You descend a replica staircase and imagine the experience in its prime. Priests chanting, incense swirling, a king ascending to join the gods on the exact day predicted by his astrologer priests decades earlier. Coordinated timekeeping and stagecraft at its finest. And yet, despite all this grandeur, the scribes themselves were often anonymous. Few signed their names. They were channels, not authors, transmitting divine patterns, not personal opinions. Their job wasn't to innovate. It was to keep time sacred. You look again at the scribe's hand, steady, patient, utterly devoted. This isn't just artistry. It's trust. Every line he draws is a thread connecting past to future, day to deity, bark to star. It makes you wonder what parts of your life are etched permanently and which ones wash away like soot in rain. So tonight, as you drift off beneath a Codex facsimile pinned to your tent ceiling, you think of calendars made of trees, stones that whisper dates, bones that remember. The Maya didn't just track time. They enshrined it. You wake up with the sun streaming through a canopy of leaves, the jungle pulsing faintly with cicadas and distant howler monkeys. But something feels different. There's a hush today, like even the trees are keeping time. That's when your guide nudges you toward an overgrown causeway. Today, he says, we talk about when it all broke down. Welcome to the Maya collapse, not the overnight apocalypse that clickbait headlines love, but a slow-motion unraveling of cities, rituals, and, yes, even calendars. You've been walking through a world meticulously obsessed with tracking time, and now, you get to watch that obsession come undone. Mainstream fact: between roughly 750 and 900 CE, many of the great classic Maya cities, like Tikal, Copan, and Palenque, began to decline. Stele stopped going up. Calendar counts stalled. Glyphs vanished mid-sentence. People still lived in the region, of course, but elite timekeeping culture? It cracked like a poorly fired pot. Theories? Oh, everyone's got one. Drought, warfare, resource depletion, peasant revolts, over-farming, economic collapse, divine retribution, you name it. But here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some archaeologists believe the collapse of calendar authority itself played a role. The priests and scribes had long maintained power by controlling time, predicting eclipses, naming kings' birthdays, dictating farming seasons. But when predictions failed, when crops withered anyway, faith in the calendar priests may have faltered. Imagine you're a Maya farmer. You've been told to plant on 3 because the gods demand it. But the rains don't come. Again. And again. Suddenly, those complicated glyphs seem a lot less divine and a lot more like, well, lies. Historians still argue whether scribes continued working quietly during this period or if they fled with their codices into the jungle. Some evidence suggests a diaspora of knowledge, scattered priests carrying bundles of bark paper into small villages, trying to keep the calendar alive without royal temples or courtly rituals. You hike into the crumbled heart of one of those fallen cities. Roots split temples open like cracked teeth. A once grand observatory is filled with dirt and vines. The stele, weathered into silence. You run your hand over a glyph that once told the date of a ruler's great triumph. Now it just dissolves. And yet, something weird happens. Your guide points out a faint carving made after the supposed collapse. It's a calendar date. Roughly 928 CE. Someone, somewhere, was still counting. Turns out, the fall of the classic cities didn't erase timekeeping entirely. It just decentralized it. You can almost picture a defiant old priest scrawling long count dates into the dirt of his hut floor, whispering, "I'll stop when the sun does." Quirky anecdote: some late Maya communities invented new glyph styles, looser, almost punk rock compared to the rigid classic glyphs. It's as if the rules broke, and the scribes went a little rogue. But things get even stranger. In the northern Yucatan, cities like Chichen Itza began to rise just as the southern ones fell. And wouldn't you know it, they brought their own calendar twist. Instead of sticking purely to the traditional long count, they emphasized ritual cycles, especially those tied to Venus and warfare. Chichen Itza's architecture, like the famous El Castillo pyramid, literally embodies calendrical math. The staircase? 91 steps per side, 4 sides, plus the top platform? That's 365, your solar year, built in stone. Time wasn't dead, it had just migrated and adapted. You hike to the top and gaze over the jungle. You realize, the Maya didn't abandon timekeeping. They rewrote it to fit new powers, new centers, new needs. Still, something's missing. Those intricately carved stelae from Köppen, those bark codices from Palenque, they stop appearing. And that's when you remember what your guide said at breakfast. Sometimes, when power collapses, so does memory. This was a civilizational identity crisis. Imagine if your calendar stopped telling you when to plant, when to mourn, when to celebrate. Imagine if your gods missed their appointments. So what filled the void? Oral traditions, mostly. As you saw earlier, stories, chants, dances, they picked up where the scribes left off. The people didn't stop marking time. They just stopped needing kings to do it for them. And yet, deep in caves, in ruins, in obscure corners of the jungle, you find the odd glyph still etched, like a heartbeat refusing to flatline. One carver's scratched note reads, 4 a jaw, 8 cum q. A sacred date. Maybe a final record. Maybe a quiet protest. Maybe just a way to say, we're still here. You sit beside a toppled monument and consider something strange. The collapse wasn't clean. It wasn't total. It was messy, slow, uneven. And the long count itself? It never stopped ticking. There's evidence that some scribes tracked time far beyond the collapse, into the post-classic, and possibly even into contact with the Spanish. Their world burned around them, but they kept counting. Counting for the sake of order, memory, or maybe just stubborn hope. Tonight, as the stars emerge, Venus first, then Orion, you realize you've walked through a dying calendar culture that refused to fully die. You saw time slip from monuments to memory, from palaces to peasants, from bark paper to song. And it still echoes. Not bad for a civilization that supposedly disappeared, huh? You wake tonight inside a small thatched home, not a museum, not a ruin, but a living Maya village. A rooster murmurs in his sleep outside. Corn husks hang drying above your head. And over the hearth, etched into a cracked ceramic pot, you spot something familiar, glyphs. Still there. Still breathing. Because the Maya didn't vanish. You've seen that already. But what you haven't yet explored is how Maya timekeeping survived, not as relics, but as living practices. That's where tonight's path leads you now. No more ruins. Now you walk into kitchens, festivals, and modern rituals, where the sacred calendars still whisper beneath plastic tarps and cell phone towers. Mainstream fact: in parts of Guatemala and southern Mexico today, The 260-day Tzolk'in calendar is still used. Not just in theory, not as museum talk, but actively, to track birthdays, divine character traits, schedule ceremonies, and guide planting seasons. Yes, somewhere out there, a farmer still checks a 2ben day before sowing his maize. You sit cross-legged with a daykeeper, a modern Maya spiritual guide whose job is to track the Tzolk'in and perform rituals. He holds out a bundle of beans, polished and worn from years of use. He casts them onto a woven mat and begins to chant. It sounds ancient. It is ancient. Then he grins at you and says, "You were born on 7/9. Jaguar day. Protector. Bit of a troublemaker." You blink. That was oddly accurate. Fringe theory time. Some researchers believe the 260-day calendar correlates to human gestation about 9 months. That may be why it became central to tracking identity and fate. So when your daykeeper tells you your Tzolk'in sign, it's not astrologer light, it's almost like you're hearing your soul's timestamp. Historians still argue whether this calendar was originally agricultural, spiritual, or astronomical. Most now lean toward it being ritual first, but no one agrees fully. And yet, somehow, its accuracy for Venus cycles and eclipse prediction continues to floor modern astronomers. Coincidence? Or math and mysticism beautifully tangled? You follow your guide into a family courtyard where preparations are underway for a naming ceremony. The baby's name isn't chosen until a daykeeper reads the Tzolk'in and identifies a favorable sign. Today is 9 Kayat, associated with fertility, weaving, and community ties. A perfect match for a baby girl born during planting season. Jokes fly, incense curls, and the grandparents argue gently over which grandmother's name should get recycled. The moment feels universal and yet, completely unique to Maya continuity. You help prepare tamales, and an elder shows you her embroidered huipil. Look closely, and you'll see glyph motifs woven into the fabric, stylized but unmistakable. Time, it seems, even gets stitched into clothing. Quirky detail. In some highland Maya villages, people still maintain secret calendars passed down only orally or through ritual, not written anywhere. It's like timekeeping by inheritance, where only certain lineages are allowed to hold the knowledge. A kind of sacred monopoly on memory. And here's where it gets more layered. These modern practices exist alongside Catholic traditions, government calendars, and yes, smartphones. A daykeeper might check the Tzolk'in in the morning, go to Mass at noon, and later upload a calendar blessing video to TikTok. Welcome to hybrid time, where ancient and modern coexist, not compete. You visit a small school where children learn both Spanish and K'iche'. On one wall is a mural, on the left, the Gregorian months, on the right, the Tzolk'in glyphs. January, February. Imix, Ik, AKBL. 2 rhythms. 1 heartbeat. 1 teacher jokes, our students know more calendars than the president. As night falls, you're invited to a fire ceremony. Copal incense burns. Offerings, beans, chocolate, flowers, are placed around the flames. The daykeeper chants the name of each day lord, calling on their guidance. The fire crackles. Sparks leap like stars. You feel time folding around you, not in straight lines, but spirals. This is how Maya time lives on, embodied in practice, remembered in language, encoded in ritual. And yet, not all is smooth. Some communities have faced suppression of calendar knowledge, especially during colonial and post-colonial eras. There were times when daykeepers operated in secrecy, their practices dismissed as superstition or even outlawed. Only recently has there been a resurgence, an intentional reclaiming of calendar wisdom as cultural identity. You meet a young linguist helping elders record Tzolk'in terms in endangered dialects. It's not just saving words, she says. It's saving timelines. Another activist daykeeper runs workshops for youth. He wears Air Jordans and a woven sash embroidered with glyphs. My grandfather taught me how to read the beans, he says. Now I teach with slideshows and memes. Same energy. And here's your quirky closure. Someone hands you a Maya calendar app. It works like a horoscope app but with glyphs, corn metaphors, and ritual alerts. One notification reads, "Today is 5 AJ. Light a candle. Talk to your ancestors. Avoid buying anything green." You chuckle, but you don't delete the app. Because, somehow, even your sleep-hazy brain feels the rhythm. The Tzolk'in, the solar year, the sacred beans, the barkfold books, they're all still here. Not museum pieces. Living tools. Time continues, not just counted but celebrated. And tonight, as the fire dies and everyone wanders home under a sky smeared with Milky Way, you understand something quiet and enormous. The Maya didn't invent time. They invited it in, gave it names, danced with it. And they never let it leave. You stir awake with the soft sounds of dawn, wooden roosters crowing, tortilla dough being slapped into shape, and somewhere in the distance, the gentle hum of a diesel truck that sounds oddly like a conch shell. But today isn't about the past living in the present. Today is about the future. Because you've seen how the ancient Maya tracked time using bark, beans, shadows, and stars. You've seen how they carved dates into stone and carried time across generations. But tonight, yes, we're still calling it night, because your brain's not ready for sunlight yet. You explore the question, what happens next? We're stepping into the modern revival, into the digital renaissance of Maya timekeeping. And it's weirdly beautiful. Mainstream fact, in the 21st century, scholars, activists, and indigenous leaders have been working to reclaim, digitize, and revitalize Maya calendrical knowledge. That means codices are being reconstructed. Glyphs are being taught in classrooms. And ancient algorithms, yes, really, are being embedded in software. Time, once pressed into bark, now streams through code. You sit beside a young programmer in Guatemala City. His desktop background is a looping animation of Venus's transit. On one monitor is JavaScript. On the other, a digitized version of the Dresden Codex, painstakingly color-corrected and zoomable. He's designing an app that predicts eclipse dates using classic period math. I just want my grandma's calendar to work on a Galaxy S30, he shrugs. A fringe tidbit for you. Some codices are being partially reverse-engineered using AI trained on ancient glyphs. The idea? Use machine learning to fill in broken fragments of bark manuscripts lost to conquest and mildew. Imagine telling a chatbot, finish this long count, and getting something that makes an epigrapher squint nervously. But this isn't about replacing humans. It's about collaboration. Historians still argue whether modern reconstructions of the calendar should prioritize indigenous oral tradition or archaeological reconstruction. One side says, use the math. The other says, ask the grandmothers. Honestly, the best answers probably lie somewhere in between. You join a workshop at a Maya culture center. Teens are learning to draw glyphs by hand, not to impress tourists, but to read their own birthdays. One boy leans over his sketch and says, I'm 3K'in. My brother's 12 at Snab. We argue all the time. Of course we do. They laugh like it's horoscopes. But deeper. Because here's the twist. As the Maya calendar re-enters public consciousness, it becomes a tool not just for timekeeping, but for identity. It's not just what day is it, but what kind of person am I today? A layered, rhythmic way of seeing self and community that most of us abandoned with the invention of Excel. You flip through a beautifully illustrated calendar printed by a Maya collective. Each date includes the solar count, the Tzolk'in, a glyph, a short spiritual message, and a QR code. You scan one. It links to a YouTube channel. A daykeeper explains the energy of the day with a calm voice and a fire crackling behind him. The thumbnail has subtitles in 3 languages: Kaish, Spanish, English. Quirky moment. The comment section is a mix of spiritual gratitude and timestamp confusion. One guy asks, "Why does my birthday glyph say death?" Another replies, "Bro, death means transformation. Chill." You smile. Ancient sarcasm meets modern snark. Harmony. Then comes something mind-bending, a Maya timekeeping conference. Academics, daykeepers, astronomers, artists. They argue about glyph spacing. They perform corn rituals. One panel discusses how to teach Tzolk'in math in elementary schools. Another compares long count dates to NASA eclipse data. Spoiler, they match scarily well. You walk past a booth selling hand-carved glyph pendants with NFC chips inside. Tap one with your phone, and it tells you the myth tied to your glyph, a chant to go with it, and a suggested playlist. Yes, the future is weird, and it smells faintly of copal and sandalwood. Back in the Highlands, a midwife shows you her calendar notebook. She's written due dates, not in weeks, but in glyph sequences. She says babies born on 8, 9 tend to have wild spirits. You nod. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it feels right. You attend a wedding where the couple's compatibility was vetted not just by the in-laws, but by the alignment of their birthdays. The ceremony includes Christian vows, Maya chants, and a brief explanation of lunar phases. The priest smiles knowingly when the couple kiss under a waxing crescent. Time now isn't linear, boxed in, or cold. It's curved, living, interpretive. And you realize, this whole journey, from bark paper to binary, isn't a history lesson. It's a resurrection. Because the Maya calendar isn't just surviving, it's evolving. Quietly, stubbornly, creatively. Historians once thought it ended in 2012. You probably remember the panic, the memes, the doomsday movies. But here you are, years later, watching kids dance in jaguar masks under laser lights, holding glyph placards like protest signs, chanting day names into microphones. You sit on a temple step one last time, and your guide says, "You know what the calendar's really about?" You shake your head. He says, reminding people they're part of a rhythm. Not the center. Just part. And then he flicks a bean into your hand and smiles. "Now count." So you do. You count the bean in your hand. Then another. Then 4 more. And as you sit there, under a blanket of stars that watched over empires long before electric light, you feel yourself syncing up with something deeper than a calendar. You're not just learning how the Maya tracked time anymore. You're practicing it. This is the part where time gets weird, because tonight you step off the temple steps and into the spiral. The Maya saw time not as a flat highway, but as something coiled, folded, breathing. Days didn't just pass, they returned, like old friends with new stories. 1 BEN today is not the same as 1 BEN 260 days from now, but it's a rhythm. You've felt it, haven't you? That pull. Mainstream fact, the long count calendar doesn't end, not even in 2012. That date, 13.0.0.0.0, simply marked the completion of a major cycle called a Bacton, around 394 solar years. After it, the calendar rolled forward into the next Bacton. Kind of like your car odometer rolling over from 99,999 to 100,000. No apocalypse. Just a fresh start. Quirky Maya truth. There are inscriptions referencing dates thousands of years in the future, like the one at Koba, which points to a date more than 41 octillion years ahead. That's not a typo. 41 octillion. Either the scribes had a cosmic sense of humor, or they wanted to remind us that time, like the gods, does not come with an expiration date. So what happens when you live in a culture that tracks not just your birthdays, but the birthdays of stars, gods, corn, and possibly the universe itself. You don't panic at endings. You dance at transitions. Tonight, you step into one of those transitions. A small village is holding a new fire ceremony. This ritual happens every few years, aligning with significant calendar resets. It's both literal, light the new fire, and symbolic, welcome the new era. They've built a circular altar of colored sawdust and petals, red for the east, black for the west, yellow for the south, white for the north. The cardinal points echo the cosmos. A conch shell sits in the center, symbol of birth. You're handed a candle. You light it from the sacred flame. You don't know the words being chanted, but you understand the rhythm. It feels like standing in a heartbeat. And then you look up. The stars above you. The same ones the classic Maya used to align their pyramids. The same ones etched into codices, tracked in bark scrolls, mirrored in pools of still water. That constellation over your shoulder. The Maya saw it as a turtle. Another. The three hearthstones of the universe. Fringe theory moment. Some researchers believe the Maya built their temples as time machines, not in the science fiction sense, but as devices that captured the sacred now. When Venus appeared at the edge of the horizon or the sun crossed a temple's axis during equinox, they weren't watching an event. They were participating in it. Historians still argue whether these alignments were primarily religious, agricultural, or political displays. But when you're sitting under the stars with your candle flickering in sync with the chants, it doesn't matter. You're in the moment. And isn't that the whole point? You pass a young girl drawing glyphs in the dust with her finger. She's humming. Not a song you know, something older. Something cyclical. You ask her what she's drawing. Imix, she says. The first day. Water. She shrugs like it's no big deal. Like she was born into it. Because she was. And you realize something. You've stopped checking your watch. Your phone has been in your bag all night. Somehow, while tracking ancient time, you let go of modern time. It's not rejection. It's just that there's a different rhythm here. Back near the fire, a musician plays a tunkel, a slit drum carved from wood. Each beat echoes across the plaza like a heartbeat. You close your eyes. You can feel time moving again. Not as numbers, but as pressure, as breath, as pulse. And then someone laughs nearby and says, "Careful, the calendar might follow you home." You smirk. Maybe it already has. Because tomorrow, when your alarm chimes and your to-do list loads, part of you might still wonder, what glyph day is it? Not for any ritual. Just because. Just to feel rooted. And that's the legacy you're carrying now, not just a calendar system, but a worldview. A worldview where time is a story, and you are both listener and character. Where days are not disposable, but personalities. Where endings are ceremonies, not disasters. And where even the beans on your table and the trees outside your window know what time it is, not by clocks, but by the way the sun rises, the shadows fall, and the heart remembers. You take a slow breath, the fire warming your feet, the stars glittering above, and for one quiet second, you feel it. You are part of the count. The fire is mostly coals now, whispering low beneath a shawl of smoke and dew. You're still awake, somehow. Maybe it's the altitude. Maybe it's the rhythm in your bones. Maybe it's because you've crossed a threshold. You're not here to learn about the Maya anymore. You've stepped inside their time-shaped world, where memory loops and meaning is layered. And tonight, your final steps take you deeper into the soul of the calendar itself. Because while numbers and glyphs are impressive, the real magic of Maya timekeeping lives in its intimacy with nature. This isn't a calendar imposed on the world, it's a calendar grown from the world. And you, sleepy traveler, are about to feel it one last time. Mainstream fact: many aspects of the Maya calendar reflect deep agricultural knowledge. The 260-day sacred cycle, or Tzolk'in, may align with the human gestation period, while the 365-day Hab tracks the solar year and farming seasons. These calendars weren't abstract, they were tools for planting, harvesting, birthing, and dying. You walk through a cornfield just before sunrise. Dew clings to your ankles. Your guide points at the sky. When the Pleiades rise just before dawn, it's time to plant maize. You blink upward and spot the faint shimmer. The stars don't lie. Fringe curiosity. Some Maya communities use a living calendar stone, a carved boulder that reflects sunrise light on key days. It's not in a museum. It's under a tree, next to a chicken coop. It gleams just the same. Historians still argue whether the original Tzolk'in began as a lunar gestation marker, a ceremonial sequence, or something older, something we no longer have words for. But as you watch a farmer greet the dawn with a prayer and a matchstick, none of that matters. The calendar works. Not because it's flawless, but because it's beloved. You return to the village, where the daykeeper prepares for his first reading. He's old, but not ancient. He checks his notes, adjusts his sash, lights a candle. "You want your day sign?" he asks. You nod. He asks your Gregorian birthday. His fingers move quickly over the tzite seeds, those sacred red beans you've seen before. He counts softly under his breath, head tilted, gaze distant. Finally, he grins. "You are 6 AJ. Stability. Foundation. The cane that bends but does not break. You don't fully understand, but something about it sticks. 6 AJ. A day of strength in structure. You hold it in your mouth like a hard candy, letting it dissolve. At the plaza, a group of schoolchildren is rehearsing a song about the 20 Nawales, the spirit days. They wear masks shaped like jaguars, owls, monkeys. You can't help but grin. Each one dances with the kind of chaotic joy only kids possess. Their teacher explains that they're not just playing Maya, they're living it. They celebrate their glyph days like birthdays. They know which days are good for planting dreams or resolving fights. It's cultural literacy, yes, but also emotional fluency. Time with a heart. You feel a warm breeze. Someone's grinding cacao in the corner, and for a moment the scent carries you back to section 2, remember? When you first learned how time was scratched onto bark with obsidian? It's all connected now. You see it. You feel it. The cacao becomes the Codex. The bean becomes the prophecy. The bark becomes the bridge. And you've become something too. Not an expert. Not an archaeologist. But a kind of participant. A soft, respectful witness to the way time pulses through a civilization that never stopped counting, even when the world thought they had. Here's one last quirky moment. A grandma shows you her wall calendar. It has Disney princesses and 7 Ajor marked in purple glitter. When asked what that day means, she says, "That's the day my daughter was born. The day the rain started." She winks. I never forget. And neither will you. Because even if you don't remember the names Imix, Ik, Akebal, you'll remember the feel of it. That slow, deliberate cadence. That sense that time is not chasing you down but waiting for you to catch up. The Maya taught you something tonight. Time is not a thief. It's a storyteller. And this story, sleepy friend, is almost over. But before we part ways, let's slow everything down. You've walked through jungles and glyphs, through temples and beans, through starlight and calendars carved by hands long gone. You've learned to listen not just to history, but to rhythm. Now, here's your wind down. Close your eyes. We're almost there. You lie back on the soft ground. The earth beneath you still holds the warmth of the sun. Overhead, the stars shimmer like ancient glyphs painted across the sky. The night air is cool, a gentle brush against your cheek, like a whisper from centuries past. You hear the slow crackle of a distant fire. The scent of copal lingers, sweet, smoky, grounding. Somewhere, a drumbeat continues softly. Not hurried. Not loud. Just enough to remind you that the heart of the world is still beating, and it always has been. Breathe in, slow, even, deep. Breathe out, like the wind slipping through temple stones. Time no longer pulls at you. It no longer feels like a list or a deadline. It feels soft now. Round. Alive. The rhythm of the tzolk'in carries you, gentle as a cradle swing. The days spiral like water circling a stone. You are part of that spiral now. One small ripple in a sea of memory, of meaning, of life. And as you drift toward sleep, remember that some calendars don't measure minutes, they measure meaning. They don't count what you do. They count who you are. So rest easy, steady as Cain. Sleep like time is folding around you. Not ending. Just returning. Good night.